prepping and planning for the biggest trip I've ever attempted. Mother Maybelle, June, and I were embarking on our biggest adventure yet. We're heading out on a cross-country journey, and we're going to follow the Great Northern Highway, U.S. Highway 2, west from Michigan, all the way to Washington State. And then for the journey home, we'll turn east and trace the historic Route 50 back to Ohio. So yes, I have plans for a big trip coming up. First, I want to show you what I've been working on in preparation for it, though. And a big part of that preparation has been this cabinet. I had two main issues I was hoping to solve. The first was I was getting a lot of errors in my fridge, and come to find out it was a voltage drop. My fridge was too far from my electrical source, so I needed a way, one, to beef up my electric, and two, to have my refrigerator very close to it. I had to do quite a few adaptations to it. I sanded it down, I painted it, I polyurethaned the top. So there's been a lot of work that goes into it, but it's been a great solution. Great solution for what I needed. So first, let me show you what I did with my electric. And I now have 300 amp hours of battery, and I have added a charge controller, which is back in there behind the battery, which will be the beginning of my solar system. I also added back here a heftier power inverter. This is a 1500 watt power inverter now, so it can handle more draw. And here's the cabinet with the fridge installed. I have a pull-out shelf, so I can pull the fridge out to access it, and that allows it to stay very close to the power source, so I have no more voltage drop. And I'll also show you on the drawer side, I've just replaced the handles and put these little drawer stoppers on. Each of the drawers just holds things I use for cooking. So my goal in building out this van was to strip back my life to its simplest form, to see if I could have some battery left to spare for more joy and more beauty in my life. So now that I'm preparing for a longer trip, I thought it was very important to take a deeper look at how everything works. And so nothing was too big or too small. I've already showed you my kitchen cabinet, but small things like my mattress. I thought when I initially put it in, it would be important for it to fit snugly. But the reality was that I had to wrestle my mattress every time I made my bed. Was it really going to be worth the effort to just shave an inch off the side and the length of my mattress? Yes. Yes, it is. And then my closet door. The closet door. It's just a millimeter too tall, maybe 2 millimeters. But it's just enough that when I open it, I have to drag it across the floor. and it marks up the floor and it bothers me. So those 2 millimeters are going to come off. And then there is how the van looks. Before this trip, I decided to tackle some of the rust on the body of the van. Totally out of my comfort zone. But she looks so much better now that it's taken care of. This trip is about seeing the vastness of this country at a slower pace that works for me. There's going to be history and challenges and plenty of unknowns ahead. But that's part of the appeal. I'll be taking you along if you want to come. I can't wait to see what's ahead for all of us. That first night, we found ourselves tucked away on some beautiful state forest land. Nothing fancy, just quiet, surrounded by trees, sprinkled with wildflowers. It was a much-needed, peaceful rest after that hard drive. But, sadly, the challenges didn't stop there. Good morning. It's a cold one. It's hard to believe it got down in the 40s last night. And back home, most of the United States have been having like heat indexes of 110, 115. But up here in the lake, it got in the 40s. And right now it's 51. I've got a sweater and a hoodie, long sleeve socks, and I'm under the quilt. And it is cold. But that's why I came north, right? Yesterday was rough. I was fighting thoughts of turning back and going home. I talk about my electrical system a lot. That was a big change I wanted to make in this last rework of Mother Maybelle. And the electrical system I took out and put back in, I lost count 5 or 6 times during this last build. And yesterday and somewhat the day before, it just was not working quite right. And last night my fridge aired out, which was the big thing that I'd been trying to solve. I have a little steelite, tiny little portable battery, and it shows the watts coming in as it charges, and it kept cycling from 0 to 20, 0 to 20 watts. And my phone wouldn't charge on the other plugs, and you are going to laugh at me when you hear this. I didn't even think to check the easiest thing, and that was whether the batteries were empty. Well, the thought finally occurred to me this morning, and I checked them, and they are very empty. So I have Mother Maybelle running right now. I have a DC to DC charger, so my house batteries will charge off of the alternator. So I'm recharging it now. I don't know if that's the answer to all the issues I was having, because I'd been noticing quirky little things for over a day, but maybe it is. I'll give it a chance, and I won't go back home. But I wouldn't mind leaving the mosquitoes behind. They're no joke. I'm getting bit even when I don't feel that I'm getting bit. I just find out later that I have someplace that itches and welts. Even with all the challenges, there was so much beauty around us. Our first full day was spent soaking in the beauty of the incredible lake. Actually, I should say lakes, because it was here where we landed at Mackinac City that Lake Huron turns into Lake Michigan. For me, being near the water is incredibly calming. I love hearing the lapping waves and seeing the sunlight sparkle on the surface of the water. Mackinac City is exactly what you'd expect. Charming, a bit touristy, and not friendly for overnight parking. It wasn't in my plan to go to Mackinac Island, but this is the jumping off point for all of the tourists who do.
Turn right onto East DePaster Street.
What fascinated me was the Mackinac Bridge. Oh my goodness, it looks like it's descending right into the lake. The Mackinac Bridge stretches for 5 miles. It's one of the longest suspension bridges in the world. The bridge was the dream of Prentice Marsh Brown. He was prosecuting attorney for Mackinac County. He missed an important argument before the Michigan Supreme Court because the ice on the Straits of Mackinac made travel impossible. He had tried to walk it. From that moment on, he relentlessly lobbied for a bridge to connect Michigan's Upper Peninsula with the Lower Mitten part. Building that bridge was no easy feat. It took 3 hard years because of the harsh climate, and tragically 5 men lost their lives. So to me, this wasn't just a bridge. It was a symbol of perseverance and vision and sacrifice, and a powerful lesson in just keeping at it. After crossing Mackinac Bridge, we landed in St. Ignace, and things immediately felt easier. I found this wonderful camping spot right on the lake, level with the water. It was beautiful. Lots of mosquitoes, but even they couldn't ruin the peace of that view. And speaking of peace, I found several moments of peace on this beautiful hike that June and I took along the lake. There were wildflowers all along the hike, ones that I didn't know, and they were stunning. And I want to share them with you. And as I share the wildflowers, I also want to share a story that the local Ojibwe tell about the wildflower we call lady slipper. I didn't see any lady slippers on this hike, but I still want to share the story because it's a powerful tale. about perseverance, sacrifice, and the beauty that can come from hardship. Many winters ago, by the Great Lake, lived an Ojibwe girl devoted to her brave older brother, who was the village messenger. He also loved his sister dearly and taught her all of his skills, though he never let her help him. One harsh winter, a strange fever swept through their village, leaving everyone gravely ill. The chief knew of a distant medicine woman across the straits who would have the cure, but the journey across the ice was deadly. Just as her messenger brother was to make the trip, he too fell ill. The Ojibwe girl knew she had to act. Despite the storm, she decided to take his place and embark on the perilous journey herself. In the bitter cold dawn, she slipped out, bundled in her warmest furs and moccasins. She danced lightly across the treacherous, ice-covered straits, guided only by the faint lights of the distant village. When she reached the village, she shared the desperate need of her people and received the vital herbs from the medicine woman. Despite her exhaustion, her heart urged her to return immediately to save her people. Unable to wait for the storm to break, she ventured back alone. The snow had become too deep for walking, but remembering her brother's lessons, she began to swim through the drifts, letting the snow support her. She eventually reached her home shore, but her moccasins were lost. Her bare feet were raw and bleeding, leaving crimson footprints in the snow as she stumbled towards her home. The medicine she brought saved her village, and that spring, she and her brother went to search for her moccasins. But they didn't find them. Everywhere her bleeding feet had touched the snow, there were now beautiful pink and white flowers, shaped just like her moccasins. The Ojibwe people named them Moccasin-wa Bigwan, a symbol of her courage and sacrifice. So my first week on the road, it's been a true test. There were moments of real struggle. The heat, the electrical issues, the mind games, but there were some incredible moments. The overwhelming structure and accomplishment of the Mackinac Bridge, the calming beauty of the lakes and the wildflowers. This all reinforced something important for me. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to keep moving forward. Finding joy even when things don't go exactly as I planned. So, now it's time. On to what awaits us in week 2.
Welcome to Minnesota.
And I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, and specifically I'm in Inger Park. It has a tower and an overlook some trails, and a beautiful Japanese garden. I'll show you snippets of that. This is Saturday, and basically I spent the morning doing chores and cleaning, and then did some thrift shopping. I did not bring enough warm clothes with me. I brought some, I knew to bring some, but I've needed long sleeves and pants every day, and so I want some more. So I went thrift shopping for that, and now we're at the park just to get June out of the van and give her a break and get out into nature. I need it too. Still struggling emotionally and with the electricity. Been evaluating why I left before 100% ready, just because it was taking so long, and it was already the end of June and I didn't want any more of the summer to go by. So that really wears on me. Things without a home, things that I have to shift around every time we stop. And then the electricity has been a big deal, really wearing on me. So I think those two things are probably a lot of it. Very tired and exhausted. So I'm trying to take it easy this weekend and just rest. So I hope that I start feeling better. I do feel some better, just not where I want to be yet. I trust that I'll get there. It helps being here. It helps being out amongst the nature and in the trees. Duluth is a very beautiful place. I did not know what to expect. Never been here before, of course. Much bigger city than I realized. And I'm looking forward to seeing a few places here before I move on. Found a good parking place for overnight. The Minnesota Visiting Center. Had a quiet night there and slept well. And it feels good to have the van more settled. So I'm going to enjoy this park some more and enjoy my day. I'm filming myself making my lunch to remind myself of some of the good changes I've made in my van. I find quiet clips like this very calming, so this is just what I need. I hope you enjoy it too. In my last video, I showed you just a little clip of my project that I'm working on. I got a fabric panel of a vintage map of the United States, and I plan to stitch my route as I go and share it with you each week. And then when it's all complete, I hope to frame it. On Sunday, June and I took the time to enjoy the lakeside. It was a glorious day. Duluth is the farthest west point of the Great Lakes and the last navigable port that can be reached from the Atlantic Ocean. One of the favorite sights lakeside is the aerial lift bridge. It lifts every hour or can be scheduled by larger ships. When it lifts, the bridge is emptied of all traffic, both auto and pedestrian. There are about 500 tons of counterweights that lift the bridge. The lakeside was a delightful place to explore with historical buildings and even a small maritime museum. This is the sign that greeted us when we arrived at Bemidji, Minnesota. We have plenty of generators in stock. We currently have Stihl, Milwaukee, Craftsman, and Ego chainsaws. The streets in town and the roads in the surrounding countryside were lined with felled trees and brush. There were big standing trees that were leaning and lots of damaged roofs. Just a few days prior to our arrival, there had been a massive localized storm coming off Bemidji Lake with wind gusts of 80 to 90 miles an hour. Thankfully, we got there at the tail end of the cleanup, and power had been restored. But my, they had lost a lot of trees. Bemidji has a wonderful photo op at their visitor center. A massive Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. Minnesotans lay claim to Paul Bunyan because many of his logging tall tales are set there. Paul and Babe are a sturdy pair to have weathered that storm without a scratch. There also was a striking sculpture of a dancing native warrior in the visitor center park. There was no interpretive sign, but I felt it was well done, and I appreciated the honor given to the native peoples of the region. Lake Bemidji was calm and placid for the days I was parked beside her. It was hard to imagine what she must have looked like just a few days earlier during that terrible storm. It's a good reminder that storms pass. Calmer waters return, and people are resilient. And so now it's time to see where the next few stitches will take me. North Dakota, which is just past the Minnesota-Dakota state line. And today I'm heading out about an hour, 45 minutes west and going to This is on, I think it's called White Eagle Reservation. I've really been looking forward to this stop. I can't find a ticket price online, so I think admission is free. And dogs are allowed on a leash, so that's pretty awesome. Things have been going a little smoother for me. Been feeling pretty good. My electrical issues are somewhat better. My little fridge, I had an Alpha-Cool, the smallest one they make. It was not cooling. Thankfully, I was near a Flying J truck stop. I think I'm getting closer to where the electrical system will not be wearing on me mentally, which will be a relief. So the geography has completely changed. As I went across Minnesota, the forests gave way to prairie, fairly close to the state line. And at the same time, the towns changed in that every little town had great big grain elevators and agricultural storage. So that's been cool to see. So I'm looking forward to today, looking forward to the wildlife preserve and taking you with me. I'm excited about what we might get to see. These are prairie dogs. Those are prairie dogs. Oh my goodness, those are prairie dogs. Those are prairie dogs. They look like little statues. Oh my goodness. Those are prairie dogs. Oh my word. That is hilarious. I've wanted to see prairie dogs ever since I knew there was such an animal. I've read about them, seen them on documentaries, but never in person. And here they were right in front of me, popping up, chirping. Those funny little tails. What an unexpected, delightful surprise. And we hadn't even made it to the visitor center. The reserve has an auto tour, and as we drove further in, we rounded the bend, and there they were, the huge, majestic bison. The whole herd was tucked away in the shade of the trees, keeping cool, hiding in plain sight right beside the road. It was absolutely amazing to see them up close like that. June had to pop her head out the window to get a closer look. She even let out a little low growl, like they'd even notice her. What a gift it was to see bison so close like that. The reserve also has lovely hiking trails. The trail led us down into the forest, up along the ridge overlooking the lake, and then right down to the water's edge among the tall cattails. With the sun shining and the air alive with birdsong, bees, and butterflies, every step seemed magical. Gotta look up what kind of tree this is. The bark is just patterned so beautifully. Really deep crevices. And then the leaves. The bottom half of the leaf is reminiscent of oak, but the top half of the leaf is different. I'm not going out in it. Did it feel good, June? My day at White Horse Hill Game Preserve ended with a drumming circle of native singers, an educational group focused on teaching boys about their cultural heritage through music and drumming. It was a powerful experience and such a wonderful way to connect with the history and living culture of this land. While they finish their song, I'm going to show you a few sights from inside and outside the interpretive center. If you've found a bit of peace, joy, or freedom in this video, and you want to keep exploring with Mother Maybelle, June, and me, please hit that subscribe button. There's so much more road to cover, and I'd love for you to come along. been a hard past couple days. I got UV poisoning after my day at White Horse Hill Game Preserve. I spent that night with fevers and chills and all my joints inflamed. I was in a lot of pain. And then yesterday I had to call off work and I basically slept all day. So that was not a fun experience. It is not fun to be sick on the road and not have anyone with you. So I'm feeling much better today, thank goodness. And still a little tired and sore, but feeling good enough to work the day and feeling very relieved it's over. So let's see what the day holds. Just a glorious morning this morning. I just was overcome. I'm working, so I'm just taking a quick break so I can capture it. I am working with my view being the prairie grasses and Fort Buford trading post, and the wind is just making this wonderful sound in the leaves, and there's bird song, and every once in a while I can hear prairie dogs. It's just wonderful. As I drove through North Dakota, the last of the trees were giving way to prairie, and with that, the industry changed to agriculture. Each town was flanked with grain silos, and through it all weaved the trains. The trains seemed to loom larger than life and ran almost non-stop as they followed me through the North Dakota countryside. North Dakota Route 2 led us to Minot, specifically to the Scandinavian Heritage Park. This was an unexpected treat, so well done and clearly much treasured by the community. I could almost forget I was in North Dakota as I walked through the firs to that first little cabin. This is called the Sigdal House, and it is 230 years old. It was brought here from Sigdal, Norway. The house was dismantled, each log numbered. Even the old moss, which was used to seal in between the logs, was saved, along with the rocks that formed the fireplace. The entire house was packed into a container and shipped to Minot, then reassembled by a Norwegian crew. The decorations on the doors inside the house were painted around 1800 and were restored prior to the house coming to America. This is a stabber, a replica of a storehouse from a farm near Telemark, Norway. The original was built around 1775. And this replica was constructed in Norway, disassembled, and shipped to Minot, where it was reconstructed in 1990. According to folklore, each farmstead had a Christmas gnome living in their stabber. The Christmas gnome brings gifts for well-behaved children, but if the gnomes were not well looked after, they played tricks on people. Some people put out a bowl of rice porridge sprinkled with sugar and cinnamon to keep their barn gnome happy, much like children leave out cookies today for Santa. This Dala horse is 30 feet tall, and it was added to the park by the Swedish Heritage Association. Dala horses are probably the most recognized Swedish symbol in the world. The highlight of Minot Scandinavian Heritage Park is the full-size replica of the Gullstav Church in Norway. You first enter the church through the vestibule, which is a walkway that completely encircles the building. Its purpose was to protect the church and the people from weather. It was a place for people to gather before and after the service, and also people left their weapons there before entering the sanctuary. The original Gullstaff Church was built in 1250, and this replica was completed in 2000. It's estimated that in the year 1300 there were over 1,000 staff churches in Norway. Today there are less than 29. These buildings are considered wooden treasures. They were constructed using the same methods as shipbuilders, evidenced in the ceiling, which looks like the inside of an overturned ship. The structure of the building was dovetailed, pegged, wedged, but never nailed. This made the structure flexible so it could adjust to the freeze and thaw of extreme weather. Each of the large four-corner posts of the building were decorated with a face that represented one of the four Gospels. The faces, to me, are very reminiscent of ancient Celtic art. The Minot community actively uses this building for baptisms, weddings, and other special events. I found the setting extremely peaceful and meaningful, and I really enjoyed sitting within those walls for an afternoon rest.
Around the whole church is the vestibule. Its purpose is to protect the building from weather.
Next door to the park is the Free Scandinavian Heritage Museum. The museum houses an extensive collection of items that were donated by the descendants of the Scandinavian settlers who came to the Minot area. This is an example of that same Celtic head that we saw carved into the church's four posts. There were beautiful examples of patterned knitting. The story behind this bowl was amazing. This was brought with the original settlers from their home country and was used each Christmas for punch. The little ducks floated in the bowl and were used as ladles. I just couldn't believe the outstanding condition of the painting and the bowl after all those years. It must have been quite a family treasure. Just in case you ever wondered what 2 weeks worth of poison ivy looks like, I can show you. I just stopped at this gas station in Trenton, North Dakota. Wanted to pick up some ice, and there was the coolest family in there that owned the station. I would say they're Hispanic and Indian, and they were just a delight to interact with. They offered me some potatoes that they had just made. Like, to me, they were the size of a steak fry, but they were spiced like Indian food. I bought my ice and decided to order taco asada, a steak taco. And while they made it, the woman was making her meal, and she had naan and boiled eggs. Cut her boiled eggs in half lengthwise and put butter, maybe it was ghee, I couldn't tell, on the naan, and then her half eggs, and sprinkled pepper and pink salt and then wrap the non around them. And where I come from, there aren't very many ethnicities, so it's just fascinating to watch what she was eating and fixing that, and it's just a delightful start to a day. Here's my taco. I'm at Fort Union Trading Post. It's a National Historic Site, and it's outside of Trenton, near Williston, North Dakota, right on the Montana state line. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. It's going to get to 94 today. So shortly we're going to go find a shady spot and open all the doors so that we can stay comfortable. But very interesting site, and looking forward to sharing it with you. Fort Union was a prominent fur trading post between 1828 and 1867 for trade between the Northern Plains tribes and the American Fur Company. A giant fur press was located outside the front gate. This huge device compressed furs into 100-pound bales. Fort Union mainly dealt in buffalo pelts, which native tribes and local hunters would trade for manufactured goods such as metal knives, cooking pots, and fabrics. It was also popular to trade for ornamental items such as jewelry, beads, or pigments. This is the reception room where tribal leaders met with the American Fur Company traders to discuss the terms of the trade. The room was used to host feasts and was decorated with many items from both cultures. The clerk's office was where clerks tracked the paperwork involved in running the fort, including trade good inventories, expenses, and accounts. The room was occasionally used as a meeting place between the bourgeois and important American Indian chiefs and their delegations. Now, you might wonder what the bourgeois was, and at Fort Union, the bourgeois was the chief manager or superintendent, essentially the post's top executive responsible for its overall operation and profitability. And it was a pretty cushy job because the bourgeois got the bourgeois house. This was the most elaborate structure on the upper Missouri River during the peak of the fur trade. Now the house you see here is a reconstruction based on drawings, one 1866 photograph, and the archaeological remains. During its time period, Fort Union was the busiest trading post on the upper Missouri, and for most of that history, the trade was peaceful. Assiniboine, Crow, Cree, Ojibwe, Blackfoot, Hidatsa, Lakota, and other northern plain tribes traveled here to trade their furs. To quote the National Park Service, the reconstructed Fort Union represents a unique era in American history, a brief period when two different civilizations found common ground and mutual benefit through commercial exchange and cultural acceptance. As Mother Maybelle, June, and I drove into Montana, the prairie turned golden, and the world went top-heavy. The sky seemed to push down on the edges of the world as if we could see the curve of this globe we live on. We had unknowingly stumbled into the Golden Triangle, where the dry climate and hot winds produced the perfect growing climate for grains. Evidently, Montana grows a lot of wheat here. But the wheat is only echoing what was already here. The native grasses and ground covers provide the backdrop, and the world turns a beautiful shade of gold. This back road is taking us to Bowden National Wildlife Refuge, precious marshland in the midst of dry wheat country. Bowden lies within what's called the Central Flyway, a major waterfowl migration corridor that stretches between Canada and Mexico. But our first wildlife encounter was not geese, gulls, or pelicans. It was a pronghorn. It crossed the road right in front of me. Thankfully, it stopped to graze for a bit so I could capture this footage. I'm still ecstatic over this sighting. I'd never ever seen one before and had to look him up to identify him. Our plan for Bowden was to do the auto tour, which circles the lake with lots of viewing points and pullouts. If you go, be sure to get the brochure so you can read about each of the numbered stops and what you might see. So tell me, how is there a wild cactus on the High Line in Montana? Also, this is my first wild cactus I've ever seen in my life. The highlight for me, though, was June. She perched herself against the door and watched intently as every sight went by. For most of this trip, if we're driving, June is curled up against my leg or sleeping between the front seats. Occasionally she'd peek out the window, but it just all seemed to go by too fast for her. But this was slow, and the road was gentle, and June seemed to soak in every minute of it. I think this is a juvenile ring-billed gull. I just love the spots and the coloring. Google and AI weren't much help. They recommended American herring over ring-billed, but when I checked the bird species listed by Bowden, ring-billed seems most likely. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm headed out to a wildlife refuge this morning, hoping to find a good spot where I can park Mother Maybelle and work for the day. This is a gravel road going out to it, so that's promising. The road shows going straight, but can you see? There's a sign down there that says road closed. Well, I guess try again. There was a very pretty cemetery that I parked in yesterday for the evening. Lots of shade, very peaceful. So I guess we will go back there and take advantage of that shade for the day. This is a very typical situation for van life, in that you make plans to do something and you just have to be very flexible and have lots of room and space, both mentally and time-wise, for changing plans. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very stressful, because when you're in an area that you don't know, it takes quite a bit of time to find suitable places to park. Because typically, if it's warm weather, you definitely are going to need shade. You need a good cell signal if you're reliant on that. And it also needs to be a place that is okay with you parking there for the day. And then Montana turned green. The roads angled up, and the mountains were on the horizon. U.S. Highway 2, known as the High Line in Montana, was taking me straight into the Rocky Mountains in Glacier National Park. High Line seemed a fitting name as we climbed higher and higher. I didn't go into Glacier National Park as the crowds were high and my energy was low. It was a $35 one-day fee, and I just didn't think I would get the value out of it. Plus, I found that national parks are often surrounded by national forests that offer equally wonderful sights and experiences, all for free. Glacier National Park's Goat Lick Overlook was a fun stop. There was a mother mountain goat and baby perched on the almost vertical riverbank, getting their mineral intake for the day. From the interpretive sign, each spring mountain goats from the high country travel to this band of rocks exposed along the middle fork of the Flathead River. The goats appear drawn to the salts and minerals: calcium, potassium, magnesium, sodium, and phosphorus found in these eroding cliffs. Researchers speculate that when goats shift to succulent green vegetation each spring, their chemical balance is altered, causing them to seek the nutrients found at the Goat Lick. Goats use this lick most heavily in May and June, although they can often be found here from April through August. We camped for the night in Flathead National Forest. It was breathtaking. If there had been cell service, I would have stayed there more than one night. Sights like this make me wish I had Starlink. Just look at how far I've come. I'm gonna have to move the embroidery hoop. Idaho. Just stopped here for a little bit of break to give June a walk. Lovely lake with a path around it, about 2-mile path. So just giving us a break in our day as we're driving through Idaho into Washington.
Continue on US 2 for 45 miles.
As we traveled into Washington, the landscape changed again. The green was gone, we returned to gold, and the earth turned black and rough. We had entered the Columbia Plateau, where ancient volcanic eruptions had left behind the dark, dense, igneous rock that forms the plateau. But volcanic eruptions weren't the only catastrophic events this region had suffered. This is the astounding, massive, dry canyon called the Grand Coulee. It's the skeletal remains of what was once the world's largest waterfall. The waterfall was created by catastrophic, massive ice age floods, repeatedly releasing volumes of water greater than all the world's rivers combined. June and I set out from the Dry Falls Visitor Center to explore the canyon rim overlooking Sun Lake's Dry Falls State Park. We were surrounded by foreign sights, smells, and textures. From the smallest grasses to the sound of our steps, it was all new. The sheer scale of this place is hard to comprehend. It's a vast, 50-mile-long canyon carved by a waterfall so great that it couldn't stay in one place. It continually retreated backward, slowly eating away at the rock and carving what we see today. It's easy to see why this region is called the Scablands. We were seeing the effect of 17 million years of erosion and breakdown of the basalt lava flows that formed that plateau. When the last of the Ice Age floods subsided, the Columbia River returned to what had been its original channel, and this left the Grand Coulee dry and abandoned, a permanent record of those floods' incredible power. The dry falls aren't completely dry. Small lakes dot the canyon floor, and the grasses growing around them are lush and green, a striking contrast to all the bare rock. The water here is a beautiful reminder that even in what seems like a barren landscape, life persists. This particular lake fascinated me. There were grasses forming a perfect circle at one end, and the surface was a brilliant gold. Golden algae thrives in bodies of water with high mineral or salt content. June was happy to be headed back to the van. I think all of the strange sights and sounds and smells had almost been too much for her. So I tucked her into the van with her water bowl filled and went to explore the Dry Falls Visitor Center. The area wasn't always a desert. These are petrified trees found on the canyon floor. It shows that this was a moist, mild climate at one time. The area was once home to rhinos and camels. After our visit to the Grand Coulee, Route 2 carried us further across the golden Columbia Plateau by rugged basalt outcroppings, and we climbed into the foothills and then into the mountains themselves. the Cascade Mountains. We were following Route 2 through Stevens Pass and headed into Leavenworth, Washington. U.S. Highway 2 parallels the Wenatchee River in this section of the Cascades, and the river was full of people enjoying the water. There was swimming, kayaking, paddling, fishing, and tubing. We followed the highway out of town to find a spot where we could get into the water too. We scrambled down the rocks to get to the beach, and it felt like being surrounded by a photograph from a wall calendar. But it wasn't a glossy image, it was real. Then I stopped at the 59er Diner west of Leavenworth to celebrate my birthday with blackberry cobbler and ice cream. It's not my birthday without blackberries, and the 59er did not disappoint. The next day we continued west and stopped at Deception Falls. This is a national recreation area with a half-mile, well-maintained trail. It takes you to multiple viewing areas along the creek and tiered waterfall. The trailhead and parking area are right off U.S. Highway 2, which makes it an easy and convenient stop. I really enjoyed it. Okay, this is it. Seems like a pretty big moment to me. I have 20 minutes, maybe, I don't know how many miles, 15 miles left of Highway 2. And then I'll be at the coast in a town called Everett, Washington. And I'll have completed all of US 2 that I was going to do. I'll be at the end of it. I'm kind of going back and forth on what I'm going to do going south. I would love to take the Pacific Coastal Highway, which is US 101, or sometimes it's called US 1. And that'll take me all the way to Route 50. But finding overnight parking sounds like it's tricky. And that can be stressful. In fact, I got the dreaded knock last night. I was at a boat ramp river access in Monroe, Washington, which is just a little bit north of Seattle. And they had a citywide ordinance, no overnight parking. So thankfully they had a park and ride lot that I was able to move to. It was morning when I moved. You know, it just happens. Sometimes you park in good faith and you find out later it wasn't a good spot. I hope I can do at least one stretch of it for the sake of being near the coast and seeing the Pacific Ocean and having opportunity to get out and be on the beach. I will be going basically from Seattle to San Francisco, and I've really not even researched the mileage. But I really only have a couple goals on this leg of the trip. The first one being to spend time at the ocean. And the second one is to see the Redwood Forests. You'll come along for the ride, and we'll find out together how it unfolds. It took multiple tries to find a beach access that we could use to get down to the Pacific, but I kept trying. It did not feel like I had accomplished my goal until my feet touched the ocean, and I finally got there. We did it. Mother Maybelle, June, and I traveled the length of U.S. Highway 2 from Michigan to the Pacific in Washington State. What an accomplishment. Well, the electrical system crashed again. I'm gonna go this way. I woke up and everything was dead. My phone was dead. The batteries were empty, and it was a work day. So I had no way to tell them that I was going to be late. That was pretty stressful. So I drove around that day. It only took about an hour. I was only about an hour late. And charged everything back up. I'm not sure what caused it. And I had seen on several van life channels about the deal on Amazon Prime Days for this Blue Eddy. And these things are pricey, and I've built my electrical system just piece by piece, and adding it all up, it would be similar cost, but I was able to do it in smaller chunks. But on Prime Day, these Blue Eddy Elites were like over half off, and I was able to get a 12-month payment plan that was doable. So I bit the bullet and ordered it. I picked it up on my birthday, actually. and I've been using it, but it didn't come with a 12-volt charging cord. And from what I'm reading, the charging is really slow that way anyway. I already have a DC to DC charger, so I want to figure out how to hook it into that, which is going to take different cables and probably crimping, which I don't have the tools to crimp. So just kind of limping along, and I'm just tired. I think the UV poisoning, that's been 2 or 3 weeks ago now, but I really don't think I've bounced back all the way from that. And I just don't feel like tackling it. Maybe I'll feel different in a few days, and I'll order the cables I need, and I'll do it. You know, the whim might hit me, and thank goodness that Amazon will, well, at least with the cables, I can get those delivered to just a pickup place. I had to get this general delivery, and it's like 60 pounds, and thank goodness they let me use the dolly to bring it in. This beast is heavy, and where it's going to live permanently, I'm not sure. But between the fatigue and the electric, it takes its toll. But I think I'm going to be Scarlett O'Hara, and I'll think about it tomorrow. You know, they tell you that living on the road is a cure for a tired soul. And maybe it will be in time, but my experience is that the internal struggles come with me. Throughout this trip, I've been fighting stress and fatigue and doubts. Not every day, but lots of days. You know, I'm driving US Highway 101, one of the most beautiful routes in the whole country. And I can't say that the Oregon coast has magically solved everything that's going on in my head. But my, oh my, has it ever given me the strength to move forward. As you drive south down US 101, the evergreen rainforest gives way to the coast, and it's a staggering contrast. More than beautiful. The scale of those huge jutting rocks, they call them sea stacks, and the rugged cliffs, it's just simply overwhelming. There were moments that I felt like not only was I driving on the edge of a cliff, but that I was driving on the edge of everyday reality. On my right was this new world, raw and exposed and begging, daring to be explored. Highway 101 in Oregon is known as the Oregon Coast Highway, and it was constructed in the 20s and 30s to connect all these small, isolated fishing villages and coastal outposts that no one could get to.
Continue on on US
It was a
101 south
massive
for 4 miles.
undertaking. It required them to build bridges and create tunnels through what had previously been inaccessible terrain. No matter how many beaches we stopped at, when we got down on the beach, no one seemed concerned with sunbathing or swimming, and I had no desire to either. This was a place that demanded to be explored. A place for your feet to feel the different textures of sand, pebbles, or the rock shelf. Where the tidal pools invite you to peer in and find what might be hiding there. Where boulders and ledges and crevices entice you to scramble up and discover what surprises they hold. Where swirling gulls share their space and fill the air with their choir of calls. The Oregon coast is not a passive place. It's a place that's vibrantly alive. And that's what this place did for me. It reminded me of the exhilaration of just being alive. My struggles with stress and fatigue and doubts weren't cured. They were waiting for me. But the coast didn't demand perfection. It only asked me to be present and to explore the next step. And really, that's all any of us should be asking of ourselves. This is my embroidery map where I'm stitching my route as I go, and after my trip is over, I plan to frame this. And I just am endlessly fascinated by how far I've come. Next stop, California. As we continued south on US 101, the world continued its negotiation between the light and the dark. The rugged ancient forests blanketed the road on either side, but every so often it would give way to the brilliant, sparkling chaos of the Pacific Ocean. It was like watching two completely different worlds trying to exist in the same space. For Mother Maybelle, June, and me, in this time and space, the ancient darkness would win. We were headed into the Redwood Forests. This is Howland Hill Road, in the heart of the Redwood Forest, and it's part of Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park. If you like a technical drive and have a smaller rig, then I highly recommend it. The road is narrow, just one lane with towering redwoods on either side, some that grow right into your driving path. You're constantly maneuvering, and if you meet an oncoming car, be prepared to pull over, often with a steep drop-off on one side. The road is also flanked by massive ferns, and it was so dry during our visit that they were completely covered in dust. These ferns are called western sword ferns, and they're the most common understory plant in the redwood forest. Much of the Howland Hill Road is dirt, so the dust is just what happens in the dry summer as the cars travel by. This road has been part of the landscape for almost 150 years. It's an old stagecoach route that connected Crescent City with inland mines. Driving it is like stepping back in time to an era when this forest was even a wilder place. But don't assume this is still a quiet back road. In 2023, park officials estimated that over 600 vehicles a day navigate this narrow path during peak season. The parking pull-offs are small, and cars spill out along either side of popular trailheads. Even with these kinds of numbers, we humans are dwarfed in the face of the redwoods. It makes you realize just how small you are in this immense place. There are some places that are just too big for words. The best way to experience them is to just be present, to listen, and to feel. I'm going to give you a few moments to let the forest do the talking, and let's take it in together.
This morning, we're beginning with an update to breaking news as we're keeping an eye on the tsunami threat along the west coast.
A magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck off the coast of Russia yesterday.
Well, last night was interesting. I was spending my second night in Crescent City, California, and Google took over my phone and said we were under a tsunami warning. Not a watch, not an advisory, but a warning, and to evacuate. So I ended up on the ridge near the national park on Route 199 in a pull-off with a bunch of other RVs for the night. Thankfully, the tsunami was only moderate. Crescent City did get the highest waves, up to 5 feet, but there was no damage and no one hurt, thankfully. probably heard it was caused by an 8.8 earthquake off the coast of Russia. So that was interesting. I wasn't sure whether to go off my route and just go further inland, but I decided to wait it out and see what would happen. They've downgraded it to an advisory through tonight, I believe. And we're just to stay away from the beach area itself. So I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and go see some more of the Redwood National Forest because it's not in the danger zone, and will continue on my way. I did come back down into Crescent City to work today, but like I said, there were most of the city was safe. They just wanted you to stay away from the beachfront and the low-lying street or two that parallels that. So that was interesting.
The tsunami advisory actually did affect the Redwoods, and some of the places I had intended to visit were closed. I had really wanted to hike Fern Canyon and stop at the closest visitor center. Did you know that parts of Jurassic Park were filmed at Fern Canyon? But with both of those closed, I decided to go to the highly recommended Stout Memorial Grove instead. Detours can lead to the best discoveries. Stout Memorial Grove protects a stand of colossal old-growth trees, many of them over 300 feet tall and around 2,000 years old. Being able to walk among them is a magical experience. Only 5% of these ancient forests remain. The rest are lost to logging. I found the story behind the grove very interesting. It was donated in 1929 by a woman named Clara Stout in memory of her husband, a lumber baron named Frank Stout. When I read that, I had a chuckle and assumed the donation was a way for her to make up for all the logging he'd done. But I should know better than to make assumptions. With a bit of research, I learned that Frank Stout was a wealthy man who made a significant portion of his fortune from Midwest lumber, but he also deeply loved the outdoors. His wife's donation was a way to honor his passion for nature. I'm reminded that a person and their legacy is usually complex, and rarely is the simple story the right one. I also learned that what makes this place so special is the periodic flooding of the Smith River. The floods deposit nutrient-rich soil which keep a lot of the undergrowth from growing, making the colossal redwoods the main attraction. I wonder how many tsunamis and outright catastrophes these millennia-old trees have endured. And yet, they stand here creating such beauty and peace. What a powerful example of finding a way to not only survive, but be vibrantly alive, even when the world around them is in chaos.
Look how big the clover is.
As I looked at the weather forecast ahead of me, the temperature was climbing. So I decided to veer off from US 101 and head into the California mountains where it would be much cooler. Temperature is so important when you're traveling in a van, because a van really is just a metal box. Yes, I have plenty of fans and good air circulation, but if I can't find shade, then the sun beats down on that metal and heat is unavoidable. So during hot spells, I look north and for the nearest high elevation. This leg of my journey has been a study in contrasts. The dark forests that line one side of 101 versus the bright, sparkling ocean on the other. The still peace of the Redwoods compared to the millennia of tsunamis and flooding those same trees have experienced. The logging baron, whose love of nature was so great that his wife donated 44 acres of old-growth forest in his honor. It's all given me a lot to think about, especially that I'm so grateful to have experienced it all. And in my next life, I might like to come back as a redwood.
I'm in Susanville, Susanvale, California. And the week ahead, I'm going to be in upper 90s and 100 degrees all week. Longer than the week. But I'm just not up to that heat. And I don't want to put June through it. It's not the heat itself. It's being in a metal box in that kind of heat. And I know I'm not going to enjoy anything that I want to see. I just think I need to do this leg of the trip at a cooler time when I can really enjoy it. And when I can have the electrical issues solved. This is me being realistic. And if I'm going to make this kind of trip, I deserve to do it in a way where I will
been home for a few weeks now. And looking back at that reaction, I'm tempted to think I overreacted. I mean, look at all I accomplished. I traveled over 3,200 miles from southern Ohio to Mackinac City, and then across to Seattle, Washington, and down through the coast of California. I did that all by myself, just with my little dog as a companion. And not only that, during those weeks, I fought with multiple electrical failures. I battled a case of poison ivy that left me with a swollen arm for 4 weeks. I had a serious case of UV poisoning. And then on top of that, I went through a tsunami warning that sent us all running for the hills. All of those things, one after another, just added up to a massive amount of physical and mental fatigue. And that emotional reaction you just saw, that wasn't just about all the miles and the fatigue. It was about allowing myself to admit I was worn down. And more importantly, it was about allowing myself to change the plan without seeing it as a sign of weakness. Have you ever felt like that? The pressure to push through, to prove our strength just by gritting our teeth. But sometimes the greatest act of courage is to give ourselves the grace to say, I'm not doing this anymore. Life isn't always about setting a big shiny goal and completing it. It's also about being able to deal with the times when we can't meet the goal, having the ability to pivot when that's what's best for us. It's about listening to that quiet voice that we all have on the inside when it says, this path isn't nurturing you. Choosing to go home was an act of strength, not an admission of failure. It was choosing a life that nurtures, not depletes. And that, for me, was the entire point of this journey.
This is the map I've been embroidering with my route as I go along. I'll frame it and hang it as a memory of how far I've traveled, but now it's time to add the route home. I didn't capture much on film. For 3 days, my only purpose was the road ahead. Mile by mile, state by state, I watched the countryside change through the wide viewing screen of my windshield. I only had enough within me to drive, sleep, and drive again. But there were highlights that stuck with me. The burnt-out forest somewhere in the mountains of California or Nevada. The smell of Salt Lake City and the crunchy alien landscape of the salt flats. The pungent miles of cattle in a feedlot in Nebraska. The landscape rolled out before me in reverse of how I'd experienced it on my travels west. No less beautiful, no less fascinating. Each mile bringing me closer and closer to the familiar sights, sounds, and smells of home. I did that. Since my return home, there's been a lot of resting and recovery, not only for me, but also for Mother Maybelle. She went in for a well-deserved oil change and safety check. We'll need to replace brakes before we take another long trip. And I'll also need the issues with the air conditioning diagnosed just to make sure that it's not affecting the heat before we go into cold weather.
I'm hoping it's not, so that repair can be pushed off until spring and I'll have time to save up the funds needed. I've also been doing a lot of research on how to hook in my new power station to my current setup. Once again, half my van is torn apart while I attempt to tackle this. I'm right in the thick of it, so stay tuned for a future video where I'll share the outcome. You might be wondering if I have any future plans for another big trip. Well, maybe, just maybe, this past week, the inkling of an idea has started niggling around the corners of my mind. And if you're like me, creating a life that nurtures you rather than depletes you, I hope you'll stick around. I hope you'll subscribe and join me on this journey so that we can do this together.